Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of this Voxel Object Editor tutorial series. In this vid, we'll be covering the advanced mode features and a few extra tips that I hope you find useful. So since there's no difference between basic and advanced mode animation, I'm just going to close this bottom animation bar with the arrow here, just to prevent some confusion. You can close and open any of the workspaces this way, by the way. There's a little arrow to show and hide each of these little workspace windows with. And one last thing before we start is that both basic and advanced modes actually have a gizmo to help snap your camera around with. I've just been too zoomed in so that you can better see some of these buttons for it to actually show up. So I'm going to just zoom out here. Bear with me just a moment. There it is. And let's just take a look at this camera gizmo that appears here. And as you'll see, whenever I turn my camera, you can see the handles turning with it. And this is these little colored handles are actually the camera axes. And if you click on any of them, the camera is going to snap to that direction. So if I say click on this blue, this Z-axis circle here, you can see I snap to Z-axis directly facing our object here, our little green slime. And if I click it again, it's going to flip to the opposite side. So you can really quickly get the back and front views, the side views, if you click the X axis, or the top and bottom views. There we go, top and bottom views of whatever object you're working on. But there's one more little thing here that I think is very useful, especially if you're trying to work in a very exact fashion or be very controlled. I'm going to just click on the gray cube here so you can see that you can highlight it, and when you click it, our perspective has just changed here. And this is an orthographic camera mode, which just helps everything to appear very flat. And when you're in perspective, it might be hard to get some straight lines because you're having to hold your brush kind of at the side here. You can see even I'm trying to, with my tablet, move just from side to side, but it's a little bit trickier than if I were just here, and now I can move quite perfectly side to side. And with all that said, let's jump over into advanced mode. Let me actually fix the UI first so you can still see what I'm doing. That's quite close. All right. All right, let's jump into advanced mode. And you're going to see a whole bunch of new things pop up here on the left and right menus. It just got a little bit more complex looking. So let's start with the fill tool that we just noticed. Something popped up beneath the brush and fill tool, and these are different modes that the fill tool can use. This is contiguous fill, which is the way that it was in basic mode, which is whenever you have a color and you bucket a color, it's looking for anything that is touching and replacing that with whatever your active color is. But in advanced mode, you can switch over to replace color, and then any instance of this purple, say like this wand over here, when I click bucket, it's going to grab every use of that color and then replace it. So you can see how it hits the wand and the hat, even though they're definitely not connected in any way. That is replace color and contiguous fill. So the next thing we can look at here was this arrow that just showed up for us. And this comes with a few extra things that we can do, but let's just look at the arrow, because now when you're in arrow or selected move mode, you can click and hold to, you'll see a little yellow square pop up. And whatever you drag that yellow square over, we're just grabbing those voxels, and now they are selected for us to do all kinds of things, like either moving it around, or say if we want to replace a color, but we only want to replace a selected area of a color, we can then do that. You see how it's not recoloring the amount of the hat that is outside my selection here. So that is just the very basics of the select tool, but how we select things, we can do this a few different ways. You can use the click and drag, of course, but you can also double click. And when you double click, anything that is connected and the same color will be grabbed. But if you want to step it up a little bit and grab, say, every instance of that color throughout an object, you can press Control Shift and just hold that down and double click. And now you can see we are also grabbing our slime's wand over here as well as their hat. Now when you have something selected with our select tool, I'm going to try and grab everything in the hat here. You can notice that you have 3 arrows, and that's one for each axis, but you also have these 2 little planes here. So if I grab by the Y, it moves on the Y, X only moves on the X, right? And same for Z. But if you want to, say, move on 2 axes at a time, so imagine I needed to put the hat a bit further up and a bit further back, I could grab this plane here, which is connected to both the Y and the Z arrow. So that little square between the Y and Z arrows can move things on both the Y and Z axis at the same time. So I can move it here. You can tell it's not going to be possible to move it on the x-axis, and this might change a little bit in position depending on how your camera is facing, but the rules are the same. As long as it's between the 2 arrows, that plane is only going to move along those 2 arrows. So this one you can see is shared between the X and Z, and it's not going to move upward at all. It's just moving between those 2 axes. And you also have these 3 buttons down here, but much like any art software that you might be familiar with, or most things actually, if you have a Control Z, Control V, it works much the same here. You can do this via the button, or you can do it via Control C. And say I go over here and press Control V, and it's just pasting back to where the original selection is. So when you're actually copying something and moving it around, if you press Control V and then move it, it has overwritten whatever was previously there and just pasted anew on top of that. So you'll have to move your pasted selection out and then press Control V again to get your original content back where it was in those areas of voxels. And you can also delete your selection, or you can just press delete key. And I think that just about does it for the menus on the upper left. So let's take a look here at the upper right, because we've got a few new things. Up here at the top in the upper right, we have rotation and flip. And so the difference between rotating and flipping an object is whatever is on the left is then going to be facing on the right. So let's just demo this a little bit. You can see if I rotate something on the y-axis, it's going to go back to the original position once I click that, 4 times. If I click it twice, you're just going to see the back of it. Now it's facing that way. It's just rotating, spinning it. But if I say flip it on the y-axis, you can see it's flipping upside down. If I wanted to say the hat to point a little bit to the right, then I could flip on the X, and now that is on the right half here, and now he's holding the little wand or in the left hand. And this is one little quick tip that is available both in basic and advanced mode, but I just wanted to make sure that people know that when you have this on, this is on by default, mirror to all corners, but say if I turn it off and I add some voxels here, you can see that it'll only show up once per mirror. It's not actually showing up in this little 4th quadrant or anywhere else along the bottom. You can see how it added once but nowhere else. Mirror to all corners is just making each mirror work with the others. So let's say if I did that again with mirror to all corners on, and now you can see every corner here has been expanded a little bit, both at the top and bottom. And this little fourth quadrant here has also been filled with voxels. And so the next thing I want to cover is actually back here in the upper left, but it's kind of big enough to be its own thing to talk about here. So we have our regular color picker in basic mode, which just looks like this, and you can slide the colors around. You can shift your hues and slide your values and saturation kind of manually like so. But if we jump over into advanced mode, this expands quite a lot. Let's just go through this probably from the bottom up here, starting with presets. So these presets are colors that we have determined that might be useful for you starting out if you want to say get something just made in black and white, which could be helpful if you are tinting objects in game. Sometimes you might want them to be pretty black and white so that there's no extra colors affecting your tint. We have some metallic colors, so if you want to paint things kind of gold, rose gold, or rusty, or anything like this. And there's some color palettes that we've used across our games that you can kind of pick through here, like Puzzle Garden or Battle Heroes. Battle Heroes is very vivid. And I'm just going to leave this on grayscale, but I'm also going to drop down my colors here. And this was the last palette that I was working on. This is where you can save colors that you're working on, whether it's on a specific object, if you need a new object and you want to remember its colors, or if you just want to kind of experiment with your color palette. Any color that you want, you can add to this palette just by whatever's here. Whenever you click any of these open spaces, it gets added to that. And whenever you want, say if you make a mistake, you can press and hold Alt and then click that again, and it just removes that from that space. You can also add new palettes to this and then rename them. You can see I've got quite a lot here. I'm just going to create a new one just to demo this, and I'm going to rename it. What's our little creature's name? I didn't even give them a name. They're just green. Greenie. I'll name them Greenie. And I'll click done. And now whenever we go to look for it, it will be right there. Remember that this might not save if you don't save your object. So if you leave the page without actually committing something, you might lose whatever you've added to these palettes here. So be sure to save your object, to as well save your palettes. This is helpful if you have certain colors selected and you want to just quickly grab, let's say, whatever their complementary colors are, which if the briefest of overviews about this is a complementary is whatever is right across from, let's say, green on the color wheel, which would be, purple, which is very helpful for this one because that's pretty much how we made it. If we go triadic, we get to see a few more colors in the bar here. And so I want you to imagine where green is on the color wheel. And then I want you to draw a triangle outward from that. And those are triadic colors. So in a triangle fashion, away from green, you will find blue and then red. And if we're moving over to tetradic, I want you to do the same thing where we were imagining a triangle. Now I want you to imagine drawing a square outward from green on the color wheel, and then you will land on one corner will be red, one will be blue, and the other one will be a bit more purple. And the last color mode that you can see here is was it analogous, correct? Yeah, analogous colors. And these are just colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So if I'm on green and I move like one spot to the left, I'll get more of a yellow green. And if I move one spot to the right, I'll probably get something that's a bit more blue green. And so whenever you want to experiment with colors, you can just grab whatever your active color or target color is, and then move over here, pick whatever the complementary color is, and you can just switch to that really quickly. And you can see that this bar keeps changing depending on the colors that we have. So if you've grabbed like a very white or a very black and you're like, why can't I see complementary? Because there is no spot for that on a color wheel. They are devoid of saturation, so nothing's going to appear here for you. You're going to have to grab something with some saturation to it to be able to use these. And in this menu here is just what it says on the tin. It's the current voxel object. So every color that I've used so far in this voxel object shows up here in this bar. And there's another cool thing that you can do here. You can, whenever you have your colors here, I know we've made one, but we can also add this set to user colors with this button here. And this just creates a color palette for us using all of the colors that we have, so we don't have to manually make a new palette, grab the color, add it, grab the color, add it, grab the color. So this just removes some of that tedium from making our own palettes. And again, you can rename it. Let's call it Greeny 2. And click done. And whenever we save our object, that will be saved into our palettes. So say we want to make a lot of green slime creatures of different, RPG classes. Like this is our wizard, and we want our knights and I don't know, paladins to have the same basic greens to them. Then this makes it very easy for us to then go into a new object and already have those ready to pick from. And the last thing that got added here to the color menu is this jumble of numbers, and these are actually hex codes. So if you're familiar with other art software and you use the eyedropper and it gives you this little, whatever your eyedropper lands on, it pumps out this little code of, was it 6 characters, of sometimes numbers and letters. These are just codes for that color. So say if I wanted to paste something in here, like the hex code for red, which is FF0000, and press enter. Now that is our active color. So if you want to move through colors very precisely, or you already have a palette in mind, you can just paste the hex code for that color into here, press enter, and now that is your active color. So I've got just a couple more tips here that aren't necessarily limited to advanced mode. They're just something that I find might be a bit more advanced in to think about here. When you are wanting to move in a very controlled fashion, you can always hold shift to draw straight lines. And so wherever you put your voxel down first, it's going to be able to draw one of 2 straight lines outward from that, one axis or the other. And it's going to be limited to, again, where this voxel started. And the last thing here that I want to show you, but I don't want you to get too worried about the details of, because we can cover this more in another video. This is the F3 menu. And the reason I'm saying we can cover this in another menu is because this brings up the render settings. And the render settings you will probably use more frequently in the game editor. So we're probably more likely to talk about it there in our game editor overview tutorial. But if you want to quickly see how your object is going to look when it's in game, or if you have very specific render settings in your game, you can go in here and adjust things like the fog, the background color, and however your lights may look or behave in your game, so that they can kind of match up, or you can just sort of experiment with how you want your object to appear. And this also includes our post-processing things like bloom and vignette. So experiment with these. Know that they won't be saved, and whatever you do here is not accessible through Control Z. This is really just a placeholder tool for you to quickly preview how things are going to look when you have them in your game. This is not going to be saved with your object. It really just exists here to give you a preview. And this is, again, hidden in the F3 menu. So you can pop this in and out to get these advanced render settings. And with that, you now have all the tools of the Voxel Object Editor at your disposal. Thank you for sticking through this tutorial series. If anything is confusing or unclear, you can always reach out to us at our Discord. Just put .bigbang.com/Discord in your search bar. Our devs are always around to help answer your questions. And with all that said, I wish you much success with your voxel creations, and as always, I hope you have a good one.